From the fall of Rome to the dawn of the Renaissance, the Middle Ages was an era of history that encompassed massive social change. A time of international warfare, national rebellion, devastating disease, and at times brutal cruelty. Here are a few of the highlights, or lowlights depending on your point of view, that occurred over the 1,000-year period. Welcome to Medieval Madness. .455, the fall of Rome. After being sacked by Alaric, king of the Visigoths in 410, and then by Genseric, the king of the Vandals, some 45 years later, this was the death knell that tolled the end of the Roman Empire. In 480, the violent murder of Nepos, the last Roman emperor, ushered in what is considered by many to be the beginning of the Middle Ages. Now, with no single state or government to unite the people of Europe, it was the Catholic Church that became the most powerful institution in the Middle Ages. 481, Rise of the Franks. Clovis was the first king of the Franks who was able to unite the Frankish tribes together under one ruler and usher in the Merovingian Age, which ruled over what would eventually become known as France for the next 200 years. Clovis converted to Christianity in 496, and the Franks defeated the Visigoths in the Battle of Vouillé in the spring of 507. 535, the Justinian Code. Justinian I became Eastern Roman Emperor in 527 and began his restoration of the empire. He published a code of civil law 2 years later that is still the basis of civil law in many countries today, and became known as the Code of Justinian. His reign marked a development in Byzantine culture. 570, Muhammad is born. Muhammad was born in Mecca. He is regarded as the last of the sent prophets, and his revelations from God are recorded in the Quran, the central religious text of Islam and the holy book of the Muslim people. 597, First Archbishop of Canterbury. Augustine, a Christian monk from Rome, was said to be the apostle to the English, and was created archbishop by Pope Gregory the Great. He was sent to England and was successful in converting King Ethelbert of Kent to Christianity. Augustine was a founding figure in the Church of England. 793, the era of the Vikings begins. Raiders sacked the church of St. Cuthbert at Lindisfarne off the English coast, said to be the birthplace of Christianity in Britain. The assault sent shockwaves across the whole of Europe. The Viking Age saw 200 years of terror as Scandinavian warriors pillaged and plundered, killing thousands of Europeans, Russians, and Byzantines in their quest to conquer. A group of Vikings settled in northwest France and became known as the Normans. 800, Rise of the Carolingian. Charlemagne was crowned the Emperor of the Romans by the Pope, the first in 300 years. Already having conquered a huge empire in the west, he allied closely with the Catholic Church, consolidating both religious and political power. He has been referred to as the Father of Europe. 886, Alfred the Great. Alfred became the first king of a united England after he drove the Danes from London. 961, Otto the Great. After Charlemagne, it was the ambitious Otto who made his mark as Holy Roman Emperor. He continued to unite the German tribes, asserted control over the church, and strengthened his authority by expanding his powers. Otto was known as a great military commander and conquered the Kingdom of Italy. 1021, the first novel. The Japanese epic The Tale of Genji, said to be the world's first novel, was written by the noblewoman and poet Murasaki Shikibu. 1066, William the Conqueror. The Duke of Normandy conquered England after he defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings, ended Anglo-Saxon rule, and started the Norman lineage. It is seen as the most important event in medieval England as it transformed society and politics, affecting both English culture and the language. 1088, the first university. The oldest European centre for education was formed in Bologna, Italy by a guild of students and was the first university to employ a woman as a lecturer in 1239. Bettisida Gozzardini first studied at Bologna and then taught there, but was supposedly asked to wear a veil so that she would not distract her students. 1095, the First Crusade. The first of 9 major crusades began when Pope Urban asked for support to capture the Holy Land from the Muslims who had captured the portions of the Byzantine Empire, or Eastern Roman Empire. The First Crusade ended in victory for the Europeans, but triggered more fighting which continued off and on until the end of the 15th century. Thousands of Muslims and Christians were killed in the religious wars to conquer Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. 1119, the Knights Templar. The military order of the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon was formed to protect Christian pilgrims when visiting the Holy Land. Known for their distinctive white mantles with a red cross, they quickly rose to power, becoming wealthy by establishing an early form of banking. They were brought down in 1312 by King Philip IV of France, and many members were accused of heresy and executed. 1206, the Mongols. Genghis Khan was elected as ruler of the Mongols and their empire was established. The Mongols would go on to conquer much of Eurasia during the 13th and 14th centuries, becoming the largest empire in history. 1215, Magna Carta. King John of England was forced to sign the Great Charter at Runnymede by a group of rebel barons stating that he was not above the law. The document granted greater power to the nobility and laid the foundations for democracy. 1271, Marco Polo. At the age of 17, the Italian explorer set off on his journey to Asia. He spent 24 years exploring before returning to Venice and publishing a book about his travels, in which he documented his adventures in countries such as India, Persia, Japan, and China. 1273, the House of Habsburg. Count Rudolf I was the first king of Germany from the Habsburg dynasty to be made Holy Roman Emperor. The family went on to become one of the most important in Europe, producing kings of Croatia, Spain, Portugal, and Hungary, among others. The family's desperation to consolidate their power led to inbreeding, which produced physical impairments and facial deformities, including the Habsburg jaw, nose, and lip. 1296, Scottish Wars. Edward I of England invaded Scotland and the First Scottish War of Independence began, resulting in the Battle of Stirling Bridge a year later. William Wallace became one of the leaders of the resistance and was appointed Guardian of Scotland. He was later captured, hanged, drawn and quartered in London in 1305. Robert the Bruce was crowned King of the Scots in 1306, and the First War ended in victory for the Scottish after the Battle of Bannockburn with a treaty and recognised independence. 1299, the Ottoman Empire. The Turk Osman I founded the Ottoman Emirate, which became the most enduring Islamic empire, lasting for over 600 years. 1337, the 100 Years' War. Lasting over 116 years, the on-off hostilities between England and France began as each struggled in their domination over the other. The war resulted in some 62 major battles and sieges, including the battles of Crécy and Agincourt and the sieges of Calais and Orléans. It eventually ended in 1453 with England losing control of all her French dominions except for the port of Calais in the north. 1347, the Black Death. The bubonic plague arrived in Europe for the first time and wiped out an estimated 20 to 40% of the population in the first year. The disease spread at an alarming rate, especially in highly populated areas. Over 4 years, it killed some 35 million people, making it one of the worst human disasters in history. 1368, the Great Ming. The start of the Ming dynasty in China was when a group of rebels overthrew the ruling Mongols. Ming was to be the last native-born ruling house in the country and ruled for around 280 years. 1380, the Canterbury Tales. Geoffrey Chaucer started work on his manuscript about a group of storytelling pilgrims. The Canterbury Tales became a foundation for the formation of the modern English language. 1415, the Battle of Agincourt. At a turning point in the 100 Years' War, the far superior French army suffered a catastrophic defeat at the hands of the warrior King Henry V of England and his small army. This resulted in Henry being declared heir to the French throne. 1428, Rise of the Aztecs. The fourth Mexican king, Itzcoatl, began his expansion of an empire that lasted for 90 years. Highly intellectual, both socially and artistically, the Aztecs had a caste system similar to the feudal system in Europe, with nobles at the top and serfs at the bottom. The Aztec Empire fell to the Spaniards in the early 16th century. 1431, Death of Joan of Arc. The teenager who was instrumental in the 100 Years' War in favour of the French was tried as a witch and executed by being burned at the stake. Joan had help in lifting the siege of Orleans, which made it possible for the French King Charles VII to be crowned. 1434, Rise of the Medici. In the 15th century, Florence was one of the most prosperous trading centres in Europe. The House of the Medici rose as a political power, producing 4 Catholic popes and 2 queens. The Medici Bank, formed in 1397, was one of the most respected and wealthy institutions in Europe. Originally part of the prospering merchant class, the family were great patrons of the arts and science, funded the development of opera and the piano, and sponsored luminaries such as Da Vinci and Michelangelo. 1439, the Printing Press. The German craftsman Johannes Gutenberg invented a movable type printing press. His Bible was the earliest major book printed in Europe and had a direct influence on the development of the Renaissance. Gutenberg has been described as one of the most influential figures in human history. 1441, Slavery. Prince Henry, the son of King John I of Portugal, became known as the Navigator as he was the main instigator of the Age of Discovery and a patron of maritime exploration. He was presented with slaves brought back from Africa. This was the beginning of the African slave trade. Lagos, in what is now the Portuguese Algarve, was the first point of entry for slaves into Europe. 1453, the Fall of Constantinople. The city was captured after a 53-day siege which saw the 21-year-old Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror make Constantinople the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. This marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, and many historians consider this the end of the medieval period. 1455, Wars of the Roses. Known at the time as the Civil Wars, they were fought over 32 years as 2 branches from the royal house of Plantagenet, York and Lancaster vied for control of the English throne. The Battle of St. Albans is thought to mark the beginning of the hostilities when Richard of York captured King Henry VI. 1492, the unification of Spain. 2 of Spain's most powerful monarchs, Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, expelled all of the Jews from Spain. By waging a military campaign against the Moors, they also drove out all of the Muslims and united the country to become known as the Catholic monarchs. In that same year, the couple sponsored an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus, who left on a naval expedition to search for a western route to China. He made landfall on an island in the Bahamas in October of 1492. Thank you for watching this episode. Please do let us know in the comments if you enjoy this kind of format, and I'll see you next week for another one. Have a great week. Cheers!